Hey, we're on another unit here. Going to look at something else to do with the cell. We've talked about the structure, how it's made, what's inside it, what each of those things do, how the cell makes energy, both plant and animal. Now we're going to look at cell transport. Okay, moving things in and out of the cell. All right, so cell transport. We know all cells have to have that outer layer. Um, Whether it's an animal cell with just a cell membrane or plasma membrane, a bacteria, prokaryote with just that, or a plant that has two layers, has the cell membrane on the inside and then a thick layer of cell wall on the outside. So we're going to look at the cell membrane because the cell membrane is what allows things to move in and out of the cell. Okay, so the cell membrane itself is a flexible layer, all right, which means it can move, it can shift. So a flexible layer that allows, if we're talking about just a single-celled organism, it allows it to move. All right, you got to be able to have that movement of that layer that's around the outside here. All right, so if we're looking at this cell, we're talking about this outer layer right here around the outside of this cell. If that layer is not flexible and doesn't give and shift and move and bend, this organism wouldn't be able to move. This is an entire organism right here, one single organism, this one cell. All right, so we got to be able to have it move. Another key thing is we also can see it called the plasma membrane as well as the cell membrane. All right, moving on to our next slide. Functions of the, well, this one here. Okay, there we go. Why is the cell membrane important? All right. There's one big word that you're going to see over and over again in this class, and that word is homeostasis. Okay, what does that word mean? That's what we're trying. We got to establish first before we can do anything else. So this word homeostasis right here. All right, it is a state of equilibrium, a balance. All right, so if we have a cell membrane here, and this is inside the cell, and this is outside the cell, everything has to be balanced. We have to have the same amount of water in and out, same amount of salt in and out, things like that. We have to be equal on both sides. All right? That's what homeostasis is, being equal, being balanced. Okay? That's where we get this word equilibrium. All right? That first part of it means equal. Okay. How we keep homeostasis is adjusting those environments and having that cell membrane to allow things to go in and out so that it can adjust and adapt, and that the internal environment, the inside, can be the same as the outside. We want the internal and external to be equal. All right. So what we call the cell membrane is selectively permeable. To select something means that we pick and choose what we do. If you select your classes, you pick what classes you want. Well, the membrane does that. It selects what things go in and out. Now, that word permeable, that's what that means. To permeate means to go through. All right, so the cell membrane selects what things go through, both inside and outside. Okay, selects what enters and what exits the cell. Okay, moving on. So our functions. We've already said it allows what enters and exits. That's number 2 here. That's a big one. All right. It's also a protective barrier. Keeps things from getting damaged. The cell parts inside from getting damaged. It holds the cytoplasm. Gives it a container. Okay. Provides binding sites for the cytoskeleton and enzymes. The cytoskeleton is what gives us a little bit of structure, a little bit of stability to that cell. And another big one, aids in cell signaling and identification. On the outside of the cell, there are little tags, little markers that tell the body and tell the other cells what type of cell this is. Right? There's also signals markers on the outside that allow the cell to do certain things. Right? It tells it when to do certain things and when not to, when to let stuff in, when to let stuff out. So that cell membrane does a lot. It's the thinnest. You think it's not much of anything, that the other organelles are more important, but this one is a big one. It does a lot, and you're going to see that as we go through the next couple of days. Okay. So how's it made? Well, we call it a phospholipid bilayer. Now, once again, I've told y'all that 90% of this course is knowing the terminology, being able to break words down. So if we break this word down, we break these two words. We break down phospholipid. We already know what a lipid is, don't we? We've done that. Lipids are fats. Yeah, if I can spell here, F-A-T. Ooh, that looks bad. Fats attached to, if we take this first part of this word, phospho. Sorry, I had a little snafu there with the PowerPoint. But if we take that first part, we have lipid, which means fat. Okay. So we got our lipid here, that means fat, attached to phospho, that means phosphate group. All right. And then the second word, bi, the prefix bi means two layers. So we have two layers of fats attached to phosphates. All right. Two layers of fats attached to phosphates. So our fats are going to be these, what we call fatty tails. All right. They're inside right here. These are our fats. All of these little strings right here are fats. They are little fatty acids. We call them fatty acid tails. Okay. These little yellow spheres on top, these are our phosphate heads. Okay. So we have a phosphate head that likes water and two lipid tails that don't like water. They repel water. Right? Fat doesn't like water. If you think about it, a lipid is also oil. Oils are lipids. If you pour oil into water, does it mix? No, it doesn't. They separate. They don't like each other. Right? So that's kind of why we have these lipids here in the center that keep everything balanced the way it is, so things don't go in and out like it shouldn't. Okay, and we have all these phosphate heads that like water, so the water's on the outside. It gives us a nice barrier there, separates everything. All right. So keeping with the structure, we already said the head of the phospholipid, the little red spheres here, are called phosphates. Those are phosphate groups, phosphate heads. And our tails are fatty acids. All right, so we got two fatty acids attached to a phosphate, gives us one tiny molecule in the entire cell membrane. All right. These phosphates can move, and we'll see in a minute what it's called and why it does it. But they can move apart. All right. And why they move apart is if I need to move a large molecule in. Say we have a salt. We have a big salt molecule. We've got sodium chloride. And I need to move this molecule from the outside here all the way up here to the inside. Okay? It's not going to fit through this little bitty opening right here. It's too big. So these things can move and shift and open up so that this large molecule can go in all the way through to the inside where it's needed. And then they'll close right back up and be nice and firm so that nothing else can get in. They're almost like little doorways, little gateways. They open and close. They're constantly moving, allowing things in and out as needed. So we're going to look at our big picture model here. This is an entire cell membrane. And move my face out of your way here a second. All right. This is a whole cell membrane. We got a whole bunch of different things in here, and everything is needed for something. But we see all of our little fatty acid tails attached to all these phosphate heads. And just imagine, we call this a fluid mosaic model because this thing, if you look at it under a microscope, the cell membrane, it moves, it crawls. All those little phosphates are constantly moving all across the surface of the cell. So to start, over here, one of these phosphates over here, it might end up way over here in a little while. Okay? So it starts over here and it moves. So it might start here and then it shifts and keeps moving and shifting and down here and it's back up here and then it goes this way and then it ends up over here. That movement is what allows it to spread open, let things in and out, constantly moving. When something moves like that, we call it fluid. You know, it's like if you poured water out on the table. It's not just going to sit right there. It's going to spread and move and crawl basically across the table. All right. Mosaic comes from mosaic tiles, how you can place tiles and move them and shift them around and have different patterns. Well, that's what we consider this cell membrane to be. Right? It's like a mosaic tile model that we can move around. And we have a whole bunch of different parts here. Okay. We're going to look at these parts in the next couple slides. So here we go, and I've already put the answers down there, but let's try not to look at the answers yet until we see what these parts are. So we have our mosaic model here. The top is going to be outside the cell. The bottom is going to be inside the cell. And we have some different things. So first of all, this whole portion here, A, this is our phospholipid bilayer. Notice we have lipids, lipids, phosphates, phosphates. So we have two layers of each. You know, two layers that have each of those things in it. So that's A, phospholipid bilayer. And as you go with your notes, if you've printed them, you can color them. You know, that's totally up to you. Just to give you something to look at later, kind of a color coding to study by. B is an integral protein. It's a huge protein that's inside this all the way through the cell membrane. We don't really need to know exactly what it's used for right now. Just know that there are proteins inside of that cell membrane. They have a specific function. All right. C here. Here's C. We got this big blob that's sticking out that almost looks like it's got hairs coming off of it. All right. That's a glycoprotein. It's not all the way through the cell. It's only on the outside of the cell membrane. And it's got these little, basically, feelers out here, and we'll see what they're used for in just a minute. All right. D is another type of protein. It's a peripheral protein, which means it's barely seen. Just, you know, if you think about it out of your peripheral vision, side vision, you can barely see it. Well, that's what this one is. It's just a little bit on the surface. It goes down underneath just a tad bit. Okay. E are glycolipids. All right, so we have here, we got these, that's what we had up here, glycolipids. These are going to be, you know, used for various things. They're almost like little hairs sticking out there. You know, we have little hairs. You might have hairs on your arm. Some of us have hair on our head, not me, but some of us. And they're used for different things, right? Like I said, next slide we'll get to what they're used for. F we've already talked about. F right here and right here, these are our fatty acid tails. All of our fatty acids, our lipids. Okay. And then G are going to be these little spheres on the top and bottom, up there or down there, up here. Those are our phosphate heads attached to those lipid tails. And then we have I. I is kind of weird. Right here, right here. These are cholesterol. And you might have heard cholesterol in a bad word, bad term, that people who have high cholesterol, it's bad for you. Well, yes, it is, depending on what type of cholesterol. There's good cholesterol that we have to have. This is one of the reasons why we have to have it, because it's part of our cells, part of our makeup of our cell membrane. Okay, so those are the parts. Now let's take a look at what they do. All right. So A, that phospholipid bilayer. That's the whole thing, okay? So we're going to look down here at the bottom. So it attracts water, loves water. That's going to be your phosphate heads. Those things love water. So down here at the bottom, all these, down up here at the top, they like water. They attract water, Okay. Helps maintain flexibility of the membrane. That's what the cholesterol is for. If we don't have this cholesterol in here, inside the membrane gets thick and hard, and it can't bend, it can't shift. And so your cells get real hard, and you don't move around as much. Makes you, I mean, you think about it, if your cells inside your muscles get hard and you can't move them, you can't move at all. And so we got to have some good cholesterol in there to have that happen. Involved in cell-to-cell recognition. Those are your glycoproteins, glycolipids. So glycoproteins, glycolipids. That's how cells recognize each other. It's like big name tags sticking off the outside of the cell. Hey, I'm a heart cell. Hey, I'm a kidney cell. All right, brain cell. All these different things. So that's how cells can tell, and how the body can tell what cells, who they are, and whether they're supposed to be there or not. Okay. Repels water. You remember those fats and oils, they don't mix with water. So we're looking at F here, our lipid part. They don't like water. Okay. Makes up the bilayer. We're going to have our phosphates, G down here, our phosphates and our lipids make up the bilayer. Okay. And then this big guy right here, this integral protein, which we're going to talk more about a little bit later, helps move things. Okay. Remember that large molecule that could barely get through the cell membrane? Well, there's even larger molecules that have to go in and out, and they can't get through in between those phosphate heads, so they have to have some help, and that protein is going to help them move in and out of the cell. Okay? So that's the cell membrane. You know, what it's made of, what the parts are, what each part does, and now next time we're going to look at how things move across. You know, there's different ways it moves, and there's a bunch of different patterns, but a bunch of different styles, different things that allow it to move. So we got some easy ones, got some hard ones, got some that need energy, some that don't, and so we're going to look at that next time. All right. Remember, if you have any questions, I do a Canvas conference on Tuesday mornings. If you can't make it then, you need a special time, just send me an email. We'll talk about a time when we could get together and discuss whatever questions you have. Or if you can just type them in an email and send them, I'll get to them as soon as I can. All right? We'll see you next time.